Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 3 for this news report today. I should have 4 parts for you. It's Monday, February 25th, 2013, and I'm Darko. Alright, I'm ready to continue here. U.S. silenced ex-White House official on terror drone program. Interesting article. The former White House press secretary has admitted that the Obama administration has pressured him not to discuss or even acknowledge the existence of U.S. assassination drone programs during his tenure. He was quoted as saying, "When I went through the process of becoming press secretary, one of the first things they told me was, you're not even to acknowledge the drone program. You're not even to discuss that it exists," Robert Gibbs said on Sunday. Here's what's inherently crazy about that proposition. You're being asked a question based on reporting of a program that exists. So you're the official government spokesman acting as if the entire program pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, Gibbs stated. Then you have this from National Geographic. The drones come home. They got a picture of one of these drones right here, and it looks like a rural area. It says unmanned aircraft have proved their prowess against Al-Qaeda, right? Al-Qaeda. Now they're posed to take off on the home front. Possible missions, patrolling borders, right? Because I care about immigration. Tracking perps. Ooh, perps. You know, that's how cops refer to people as perps. For most people that don't really carry out crimes against other people, there's no victims, but you're a perp. And crop dusting, spraying of chemicals on your food supply, and maybe watching us all. So this is a nice propaganda piece, and it's just gonna get the sheeple kind of acclimated, used to. This is the new norm. Just get used to it. And here we're gonna engineer your consent, and you give it. We'll have Sheriff douchebag come out and tell you why you need them, and Farmer Joe come out and tell you why you need them, right? Can a president use drones against journalists? They're actually asking a real question from the New Yorker, Amy Davidson, on war, sports, and everything in between. Yeah, right? Because war is a sport, war games, right? Big game. So it says here that thinking about drone strikes and targeted killings, it can be instructive to picture them hitting people you know, either deliberately or as collateral damage. Doing so may not even be much of a stretch, nor should it be, right? So it goes on here and it says that the discussion that took place in a moderated live chat on the ethics of drone warfare took some interesting turns, touching on the idea of a secret committee that the president would be asked to check with before killing an American. So they're already doing this, mind you. And the question of whether China would ever assert the right to call in a drone strike on a dissident living in San Francisco. I've never even thought about that, but hey, okay. So it goes on here and it says that doesn't a journalist working abroad who is about to release classified information about a war crime, thus committing a crime that will provoke retribution or break with allies, endangering Americans, fit this definition of a target for, basically make the kill list or an assassination target? So it says here, Walter didn't initially think that it did. The danger to Americans, he said, had to come directly, not indirectly, from the target before he can be a target. Be a bad guy. But McMahon suggested some criteria for strikes, saying if the release of classified information really would seriously endanger the lives of innocent people, and that the only way to prevent the release of the information was to kill the journalist, then the journalist would be liable to attack. So it says here, but the evidential standards in such a case would be very high and would unlikely to be satisfiable in practice. Killer robots must be stopped, says campaigners. Autonomous weapons, which could be ready within a decade. I would imagine that there's some that may already be autonomous, but if not, within the next 5 years. This is like everything else, like Singularity. It's moving fast. So it says here, it poses a grave risk to international law. The law, it poses a risk to people. Their privacy, their livelihoods, everything. You remember that professor that said that, these autonomous drones will actually be able to kill people more ethically. So it says here, these things are not science fiction. They are well into development. The research wing of the Pentagon, DARPA, in the U.S. is working on the X-47B unmanned plane, which has supersonic twists and turns with a G-force that no human being could manage. I was going to show you the article, but my internet is down like usual, so... secret space plan. U.S. Air Force's robotic X-37B continues a mysterious mission. So it's up there. It's been out there for 2 months now. In America, they're already training more drone pilots than real aircraft pilots. Of course, they have medals now for them, awards for these drone pilots, looking for young men who are very good at computer games. They're looking at swarms of robots with perhaps one person watching what they'll do. One person watching what they'll do. Sharkly insists he is not anti-war, but deeply concerned about how quickly science is moving ahead. Washington State bill to limit drone use passes committee from the 21st of February. It says bipartisan legislation to limit drone use within Washington State was approved Thursday 9-1 after a large group of people, from regular citizens to a former FBI employee, came to show and voice their support. Then you have Montana votes 20-0 in favor of anti-NDAA bill. So, Anti-National Defense Authorization Act movement continues to gain traction. It goes on here and it says that People's Blog for the Constitution highlights the latest developments. But it goes on here and says that it was a 20-0 bill that bans cooperation with federal agents over the National Defense Authorization Act. It's just passed the Montana House. So it's known as HB 522. The bill would also require the state's attorney general to report any attempts by federal officials who try to enforce the NDAA. It's one step closer to becoming law. Court rules there is no right to carry a concealed weapon. In a sweeping ruling, the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that there is no Second Amendment right to carry a concealed firearm in public. The broad wording of the decision in the Peterson versus Martinez case creates a far-reaching national precedent against carrying a loaded handgun outside the home. The case began on a narrow point, a challenge by a Washington State man against Colorado's law to issue the concealed handgun license only to state residents. But the final ruling held in light of our nation's extensive practice of restricting citizens' freedom to carry firearms in a concealed manner, we hold that this activity does not fall within the scope of the Second Amendment's protections. That's funny, they actually said that. But the final ruling, in light of our nation's extensive practice of restricting citizens' freedom to carry. Russia gets tough new smoking law, so it says no more lighting up in bars, offices, and playgrounds. Life is about to get tougher for smokers in a country with one of the world's largest or highest rates of tobacco use. Putin has signed a tough new law of anti-smoking measures into law banning smoking in workplaces, restaurants, long-distance trains, and other public places like beaches and playgrounds, the BBC reports. It sailed through the parliament with stiff opposition from the country's powerful tobacco industry. The move comes as a part of a push to improve public health that has already seen beer reclassified as an alcoholic drink instead of food. That's interesting because I've learned about that recently, about how, the people that ran stuff, the elites, the kings and all that, they always have like these people, these poor peasants that didn't, they worked on around all this food and slaved away on these farms, but they were always, they'd be starving. And so, they always made sure that they had beer for them because beer would keep their stomachs full and it would also lower the chances of them revolting. This probably goes way back to the czars and was like that in other countries as well in Europe, so that's why it's probably still considered a food. Iceland's internet porn ban sparks uproar. So in an age of instant information, globe spanning viral videos, and the web, can a thoroughly wired country become a porn-free zone? Authorities in Iceland want to find out. So they're drafting plans to ban pornography in print and online in an attempt to protect children from a tide of violent sexual imagery. So the proposal by the Interior Ministry has caused the uproar. Opponents say the move will censor the web, encourage authoritarian regimes, and undermine Iceland's reputation as a Scandinavian bastion of free speech. Advocates say it's a sensible measure that will shelter children from serious harm. Goes on, it says pornography is already banned in Iceland and has been for decades, but the term is not defined, so the law is not enforced. We have spy sues cops for pain of decade of deception. A former police spy has lifted the lid on his decade of deception with the codename Muldoon. So his double life infiltrating protest groups and leading trade unions are contained in a draft claim for more than $500,000 from police for lost income, for humiliation, distress, and loss of reputation. He says he claims to bolster his cover for what he says he became a $600 a week job. He became a vegan, an anarchist, an animal rights activist, and a Taino whatever supporter. He's helping police to gather intelligence on activist groups. When his relationship with his family suffered because of the lies he was having to tell, his police handler met his parents and told them about the work he was doing, describing him as a police national asset. This is funny. Union representatives said they had no suspicions of being spied on and could not imagine why police would wish to do so. Duh. They've been doing this since the beginning of unions. That's where the whole infiltrating of protesters, I don't know if it began then, but it was really popular with the anarchist movement in the early 1900s and the trade unions. They would infiltrate them, and they would start provocateuring, starting violence and stuff, so they can clamp down on them. I mean, just ask Jimmy Hoffa if he thinks that the police were infiltrating. Police come upon surrendered suspect lying down with arms and legs spread, proceed to viciously beat him. It says when 4 Canadian police officers came upon a surrendered suspect lying on the ground with his arms and legs spread in a moment of total submission, they did what any law enforcement officer in their position would do: beat the man senseless, then lie about it on their police report. So they say that it's bringing the officer's conduct into question. So it goes on here and it says the city spokesman, this is in Canada, would not confirm what the police are suspect of doing. He said the police officials received information about the arrest, which is not consistent with the police report. In other words, the cops lied. Thankfully, it's all caught on camera. Next up, we have King of Spain's daughter may be named as a suspect in multi-million-dollar or euro fraud case as her husband faces court quiz. They did fraudulent deals with politicians, allegations of money laundering by using offshore accounts. No surprise, right? Calls for abdication of the king over corruption scandal. Funny because I saw this article. This one was from what, the 23rd. This is from the 22nd, a day before. Spain's king unpopular. Approval of Juan Carlos at new low after austerity and corruption scandal. Over 40 arrested, dozens hurt in Spain after protests. It says after the Saturday rally, Madrid police reported riots around the city's train station where 45 people, including 9 minors, were arrested. Hundreds of thousands of Spaniards participated in nationwide protests against spending cuts, the privatization of public services, and allegations of corruption by politicians as well as the royal family. Remember this, Catalonia has declared itself a sovereign nation. The decision has no legal consequences. So it goes on here and it says that it will be a historic vote. Maybe it will not resolve our problems in 24 hours, but it will lead our country towards its destiny, quoted this Artur Mas, the region's president of Catalonia. But it goes on here, it says the center-right People's Party opposes Catalonia's secession from the Spanish state. According to its regional leader, Camacho, most Catalan people do not want independence. They do not want the secession and the disintegration of our country. You are defying the Spanish government. Ooh, you're offending the Spanish government, the outraged politician told her colleagues. So they went on and said the decision of the Catalan parliament has no legal consequences. It is rather a political issue, a parliamentary declaration, which means only that the Parliament of Catalonia declared its sovereignty over the province. It says it will make no sense as soon as tomorrow. That's pretty interesting. So it doesn't matter whether you declare your sovereignty, it just matters whether other people recognize your sovereignty. Yeah, so they said it has no legal consequences under Spanish law. Obama administration moves forward on climate change without Congress. Forthcoming regulation likely means no new coal-fired power plants will be built in the United States. It says Obama is tired of waiting for Congress to move on legislation to reduce carbon emissions, and his administration is poised to move forward on actions to do that. He will effectively eliminate the possibility of any new coal plants. So we can choose to believe that Superstorm Sandy and the most severe drought in decades and the worst wildfires some states have ever seen were all just freak coincidence. No, actually, they're weather modification and probably leading up to an ice age. But Obama says, or we can choose to believe in the overwhelming judgment of science. See, science rules over everything. But unfortunately, a lot of it's pseudoscience. So we have to act before it's too late. And we were just talking about in that article from Land Destroyer Report about what? About the professors basically being quoted as saying, and we're pushing this junk, basically, you have to manipulate people's opinion. You have to manipulate public opinion, and regulation will follow, right? So just go ahead and pass the laws and then put out all the propaganda, and then you can manipulate public opinion to catch up on that. You see, science rules over all, and, just the common person, they're too dumb. They don't think rationally, so, we better just act for them. This is how a scientific dictatorship works. Meanwhile, another winter storm hits, whiteout conditions hitting the plains. So they're naming this one Winter Storm Rocky. It's already dumped 27 inches of snow in the mountains just outside Denver, and you can see some of the totals that are expected here. Man's romantic balloon gesture a felony. So Anthony Brassfield faces felony under environmental crime statute. Intention might have been to watch them soar as high as their love. The reality was that a Florida Highway Patrol revenue collector was watching too and deemed the act an environmental crime. Kind of like this, Lakeland man arrested for spitting on sidewalk. The last article I have isn't viewable because my internet's down again, but it's basically a woman that was arrested for spitting on a police officer. Thank you.